Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from the Trust TV studios in Abuja. I am Suleiman. On Daily Politics tonight, the ANAMBRA elections. Again, the police has deployed 2 Deputy Inspector Generals of Police, 5 Assistant Inspector Generals of Police, 14 Commissioners of Police, 31 Deputy Commissioners of Police, and 41 Assistant Commissioners of Police to secure the November 6th governorship election in Anambra State. That's 93 of the most senior police officers in Nigeria deployed to one state for one assignment. According to the police, it is a major overhauling of security. I wish I can agree. With me in the studio today is Barrister Sam Kargo, a constitutional lawyer and social commentator, with whom we'll be delving into this matter to analyze and bring you what we have always tried to do, the very best of political analysis. But before then, first, the roundup of today's news. Stay with us.
Former President of the Senate, Senator Abubakar Bukola Saraki, has said his politics is not defined by personal ambition, reacting to a question on whether he will leave the People's Democratic Party (PDP) if he failed to get the party's presidential ticket for 2023 election. He said his concern was about building the party and repositioning it for future elections. Mr. Saraki, who was speaking on a TV program, said the PDP is on the path of rejuvenation with the party's Saturday convention. The Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Ahmed Idris Wase, has said the people of Plateau State should not vote against the All Progressives Congress (APC) in the state come 2023. He said the party has done well in the state from 2015 to date. Wase said from 1999 to date, no party had done what the APC administration under President Muhammadu Buhari and Governor Simon Lalong have been doing for the development of the state. While addressing members of the party in Jos, the Deputy Speaker advised the new state executives of the APC to work to ensure that the party wins at all levels in the forthcoming 2023 general elections. President Muhammadu Buhari has urged foreign envoys in Nigeria to be guided by diplomatic practices to ensure that their activities remain within the limits of their profession in the build-up to the 2023 general elections. He gave the advice during a brief ceremony at the State House, Abuja, where the ambassadors of Japan, European Union, Burundi, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Ireland, Cape Verde, France, Qatar, and the High Commissioners of Sierra Leone and Ghana submitted their letters of credence. Buhari's call was made in a statement issued by his spokesman, Femi Adesina. The Anambra State chapter of the Labour Party has raised the alarm over the disappearance of its governorship candidate for the November poll, Mr. Obiora Agbasimalo. The organizing secretary of the party, Chief Clement Ojukwu, who raised the alarm at a press conference in Oka, said the candidate was kidnapped in September on his way from Ezenifite, Newi to Azia in Ihiala, local government area of the state. Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike has said that the state government will not enact a bill for the financial autonomy of the state judiciary. The governor maintained that it will be futile to bother the state assembly with such a bill since the 1999 constitution, as amended, already recognizes the independence of the judiciary. Governor Wike made this assertion at a dinner in honor of delegates to the 61st Annual Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association held at the Banquet Hall, Government House, Port Harcourt. Mr. Wike's message was delivered by his media aide, Kelvin Ibiri.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. And the issue under discussion is Anambra elections. Before we went on break, I was talking to Barrister Sam Kargo, who is a constitutional lawyer and social commentator. Welcome once again, Barrister.
Thank you very much.
So,
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yes.
You can see we have 93 of the most senior police officers deployed to one state. 41 assistant commissioners of police, 31 deputy commissioners of police, 14 commissioners of police. How strange and how unusual does that get?
I don't think it's unusual. Let me tell you what is playing out here.
Okay.
It's not a show of strength, but it defines what I would call the contest between the state and the nations of the Southeast.
Okay.
Usually, people don't know that the state survives on force.
Okay.
And it's only the state that is empowered or that has the right to use...
To monopolize violence. Mm.
And when you put out yourself and you try to wrestle with the state, you must be prepared.
Okay.
It is not something you do out of any whimsical response. It should be something that is well thought out, you know the consequences, and you are prepared for the consequences. If the state cannot conduct elections in ANAMBRA, definitely it has lost ANAMBRA. And mind you, the state exists, and exists only if it's able to keep Nigeria as
so if it has
centralized
in
the constitution.
If it is unable to conduct election in ANAMBRA, and it has lost, so who gains ANAMBRA in return?
Obviously, IPOB.
Okay. And what does that signify for Nigeria?
It's part of, not so much for that. I'm talking about two entities here now that are in contest for the sovereignty over the turf in ANAMBRA.
Okay.
That is the state, I will explain that, and the nation as perhaps personified by IPOB.
Okay.
I may not be right on that, but let me explain what I'm saying here. The state is only a state and only survives if it is able to keep Nigeria, not just within its geographical boundaries, external geographical boundaries, but also as, like I said, is conceptualized in the Constitution. And that is, you have the federal capital and 36 states. And each and every one of these must be under the control, authority, and sovereignty of the federal government.
Okay.
And the subnational government, that is the provincial government in the state.
Okay.
If, on the other hand, you have IPOB getting to a point where it can obstruct the government from performing its own constitutional responsibility, what that one simply means that the government, and that is the state, is failing in that respect.
Okay.
And no state would want to fail. And let me put
but isn't the deployment of this large number of senior officers is it a show of power or a show of weakness?
No.
Isn't it a show of weakness? No. Because if you are powerful, then you don't need that much.
I know. Let's put it this way now. If they were struggling over the minds and hearts of the people of ANAMBRA, then your statement would have been it. But here, what you have another entity, a non-state actor, telling you to your face that you cannot conduct elections here.
Yes.
And it's not just threatening, but actually putting mercenaries and actions in place to prevent you from conducting the elections. What that simply means is that it's challenging your what?
Your sovereignty. That's correct.
Not just your sovereignty, your power.
Okay.
Yet, I am not in any way trying to say or trying to give judgment over the actions of IPOB. No, I am just saying theoretically, this is what is at play.
Yes.
Because I'm coming to the point here. If the state cannot maintain law and order,
yes,
which is the purpose for which it is established, and it cannot give security to the people of Anambra,
yes,
and cannot perform his social and welfare functions in Anambra, what that simply means is that what? It has lost Anambra. Okay. And that in itself put a question on its own legitimacy, because it is constituted and empowered to maintain every part of Nigeria. And that is why the language of the state, as against the language of the nations or the people, is that Nigeria is indivisible.
But the men and women in IPOB, do they understand it this way? This theoretical way you are putting it? Do they understand that if the government cannot conduct election in Anambra State on November 6th, do they understand that that means victory to them?
I wish they do, because like I said, you do not. This is beyond just mere agitations.
Okay.
Of course, if you ask me, and what I've always said, and why I've always advised that you should listen and talk to them, is a form of negotiation.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
Even the terrorists are just doing what? A violent negotiation. What the people are saying is that if you don't talk to us in the manner that would give us confidence and assurance that we would get a modicum of what we are looking for, then we have these options. I have written that Nigeria will survive, and that in the real sense, the Southeasterners would not want to leave Nigeria.
Okay.
I have made that point very clear, and I stand by that. Okay. But what the agitations or the agitators are doing for now at this point is to negotiate with the state to say, we as a nation, and when I keep using the word nation, I don't use the word state here.
Yes.
The nation is older than every nation in Nigeria is older than Nigeria.
The Nigerian state,
and every nation in Nigeria, perhaps let me try to give it the street name, tribe in Nigeria, is older than Nigeria. It is real, it is natural, and it does not have to do anything.
Barrister, let's come further to the elections. You know, the major interest.
Yes.
Now that the federal government has deployed this number of security, does that by itself guarantee security in Anambra State now or during the elections?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, in the sense that it may be able to protect those who brave it to go out to cast their vote. And no.
Do they need to brave it?
For now, they would.
Okay.
The environment is already militarized.
Okay.
And therefore, you would need to have a stake in the election before you go out
to vote.
Because they say when two elephants are fighting the grass, so you don't want to be part of that grass.
Okay.
And what that one would also mean is that the legitimacy of the government that will be produced by that election is already what?
Well, you say it. Okay.
Yeah, because the whole essence of the election is to confer legitimacy.
Absolutely, on governments.
You understand? So if many people, no matter the number, are prevented by the prevailing environment from casting their vote, because the vote is the only instrument through which you as an individual can willingly, without thinking of it, offhandedly participate in government. by conferring legitimacy to an individual or personnel of government to act for and on your own behalf as the government and state. If you don't have a hand in it, a leader, you don't want to be foisted on you. And therefore what? You become what? A slave to the system that will be produced by that process.
As a constitutional lawyer.
Yes.
As a constitutional lawyer.
Yes.
What would you say of the outcome of an election that you have described that is already militarized,
yes,
or that is going on in an atmosphere that you describe as already militarized?
Yes.
Does that affect the outcome of the election? Does
Unfortunately,
it affect it constitutionally?
Unfortunately, no. By the books, even if it's just 10 people that went to the poll, those 10 people can produce the government of Anambra State.
Okay.
And that is why, for both parties, it's never a win situation.
Okay.
It's a lose-lose situation. And if you ask me, the loser would actually be the people of Anambra State. Because
why so?
If a government that does not carry the mind and soul of the majority, it's going to be what? A government without legitimacy. Democracy is about numbers. The minority should have their say, but everything you talk about governance, democracy, is about the numbers. But if the majority,
but what can
of the
politicians,
numbers,
the political actors, what can they do in this process? Because evidently, maybe it will affect them as well.
It's too late.
If there is low turnout.
It's too late in the day to look on their side.
Okay.
Because for now, the best they can do is to what? Court the favors of the people and ask them to come and vote for them. But they are not capable of providing the conducive environment. They are not. Because if their persuasion or their personality was anything to go by, the government wouldn't have needed to deploy the sort of force that is deploying there. It is because they themselves are just what passers by. That is why you are having this. Ordinarily, I've had to say this, it's a failing on the part of the political class and the political parties, because for individuals to opt out of these legitimate structures, these legal structures or constitutional structures, to try to negotiate with the state, like IPOB, what it means is that they've lost faith in the official institutions and personnel.
But IPOB has not won an election in Anambra State. They are not going to depose.
Yeah, that is why.
It's not like they have the legitimacy that the government in Anambra State doesn't have. They are non-state actors.
You have just made my point. That's why I'm saying they are non-state actors.
Yes.
And for any place and for any time, you have non-state actors competing with you over a turf. It's a feeling on your side. And let's give it. And I've always had to say this. I said, listen, it is an indulgence on the side of the government, the state, to allow you to function the way you do. And it's also a manifestation of democracy in place, or rule of law. Ordinarily, no state in the world will allow that. Let me take you to the developed world. Look at what happened.
Before we get there, as you can see in the news roundup, that the Labour Party candidate has been abducted since September. What does that mean to the integrity of the election? I mean, the constitutional integrity. Would that have any constitutional implications? Say, for example, if he weren't abducted, he could have been the winner of the election.
We made that point. We made that point that if the leader or the government of ANAMBRA is one that does not emanate from the mandate of the people. Its legitimacy is questioned.
Okay.
But for now, you don't have evidence that he is abducted because of his participation in the politics.
Okay.
And you can't speculate on that.
Okay.
There's
a candidate in the election.
And
he has not been released a few days to the election.
Being a candidate does not take him away from the total risk within the environment.
Okay.
Many people are being abducted by the day in the environment.
Okay.
And it's also good to say the point that I'm making, that if the state actors or the politicians or the political parties had actually been effective in the area, we wouldn't have had this. It's a failing of that. How does the state feel? It feels that every institution and personnel that has the power to control.
Don't you think that's a tired argument? Every time everyone says that the state has failed, and they use that one as a basis to then attack the state. Isn't that also a demonstration of being irresponsible citizens, or rather than the failure of the state? Because there are many countries around the world, and even within Nigeria, there are many parts of the country where things are not better or worse than in the southeast, and yet people are not taking up arms against the state.
As a lawyer,
yes,
I always go with duties, public duties.
Okay.
I don't go into some moral considerations.
Okay.
It is the responsibility of the state to maintain law and order.
Okay.
The state is established to maintain law and order, national security, and provide welfare. Welfare will now incorporate security, in this sense, personal security, and personal well-being. Where that is lacking in any part of the country is a failure. When they say failure, it's not a total failure. There is no government that is 100% effective. I can't find that country. Even the countries that are best managed, the countries that are the models, the Denmarks of this world that are figuratively the ideals of democracy and governance, they're not perfect. They fail in some areas. It is the preponderance of that failure that gives you your total mark. When they say you are a failing state, it does not mean that you are not doing anything. That would be ridiculous. Of course, managing a country like this with over 500 nations, and each one of those nations is not ready to yield its own support to the state, but rather would want to take from the state for its own personal benefit. It calls for the best of management techniques. So I am not one that would definitely say, oh, this government is not doing that. So, my brother, you just start managing a large family and put that in mind as to the responsibility of the one that has to keep law and order in the whole of the country. Yeah. And like I said, I do not care whether I don't know whether I'm using the words terrorists, bandits, whoever they are, but I care about the response of the entity or the institution or authority that is supposed to put them in check.
Sure.
You understand?
Yes.
So that is why if I'm addressing the government, I'm not trying to say, oh, they are not doing anything or cascading. No, I am not. If for anything, I am one that is saying that they are too lenient.
Maybe because before we go on on a break, because we're on a short time now.
Yes.
Final question before we go on break.
Okay.
Supposing the ANAMBRA elections, for any number of reasons, become inconclusive, because we've had situations like that where INEC, in its own wisdom and or maybe based on the existing legislations, existing rules, declare an election inconclusive.
Yes.
So what would that portend in this atmosphere, as you described it earlier?
A depletion of state resources, because the process would have to be repeated.
Okay.
But definitely the election would have to be concluded willy-nilly.
Okay. What if elections cannot hold, as all efforts are made and the elections can't hold? What is the constitutional outcome in such a situation?
A state of emergency.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I don't even bat an eye. That's what I would do if I'm the
If you are
president.
president of Nigeria.
Definitely.
You will enforce a state of emergency in Anambra State to ensure that the elections are held?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much, Barrister Sam Kargo. On that note, we're going on the break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Early last month, President Muhammadu Buhari sacked 2 ministers from his cabinet. These were Engineer Mamman Saleh, who was Minister of Power, and Malan Sabo Nanuno, who was Minister of Agriculture. At the time, the President described the change as a tradition of subjecting our projects and programs implementation to independent and critical self-review. Then, on October 11, the presidency commenced a 2-day midterm ministerial performance review in Abuja here. The objective of the retreat, according to the president, was to review performance of the ministries. Following the retreat, many Nigerians expected several ministers to lose their jobs for poor performance. But so far, that hasn't happened, even as Nigerians continue to lament the lack of visibility of the Buhari ministers. So answer this, my dear viewer. What are the names of Nigeria's Minister of Trade and Investment? Who is the Minister of Mines and Steel? Who is the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs? There are no prizes for getting it right. But tonight, we look at the midterm assessment of the Federal Cabinet. And welcome to Daily Politics if you are just joining us. Barrister, I'm sure this idea of performance review, does it seem new to me only?
It shouldn't be.
Okay. But is it new? Because I haven't had any president in Nigeria saying they're doing performance review at any time in the last 20 years.
Let me be tentative about it.
Okay.
To my knowledge,
okay,
this is the very first time that a president would come out to say this is the reason for relieving some of his personnel.
Ministers.
You understand? Because there has always been a reason for a reshuffling of cabinet. And I think one thing that he stood out for is that he's the most lenient.
Okay. In what sense?
In the sense that I do not think that we've had a presidency that had a whole term of ministers without any one of them, except those who resigned.
But is that a good thing? Because if a president has taken 6 years before he sacked just 2 ministers in a cabinet of maybe 40 ministers, does that speak well for performance? Does that encourage people to take their jobs seriously? Because if you don't have risk of losing your job, why bother about it?
Well, I think, you see, every leader has his own philosophy.
Okay.
Every leader has his own philosophy, and most time I also try to draw people's attention to what the youth know. For an example, the management of the football teams in the UK. Some clubs will not give you a second chance. Because what? They give you a target. They give you all that you need. If you don't deliver, you leave. Some clubs will give you 70 times 70 chances. And let's come back to what we're saying.
But the president is running the country, not a football club.
No. It's the same philosophy.
Okay.
It's the same philosophy, but let's go back to the issue as to whether or not it is necessary. And in answering that, let's put it against this. When you appoint a minister, you give him deliverables. You do not, the office is not at large. To say it's a discretion-based office. You have statutory functions and duties that are meant to produce a result. There is no promise made by the president that is not going to be what? Performed.
Yes.
By a ministry.
Yes.
Or a department or agency.
Yes.
Because what? He acts through this. All of these people are his handmaids. Every executive office in the land is working for and on behalf of the president, including that of the vice president, and including the attorney general, irrespective of the fact that the constitution gives them specific rules. Because the presidency is one, and the executive functions of the state are given to one person and one office, that of the president. So if he constitutes his cabinet, my thought is that he constitutes that government with the set goals and deliverables in mind.
Okay.
And for me, those set goals or deliverables should have timelines, and there should be a reality check. There must be a process of assessing the performance of those functions.
Have there been such processes before?
That could always be.
Okay.
That could always be. There are there are offices there that work from behind the scenes that will do these assessments. Okay. In some other places, for example, Singapore, they have a whole institution that networks and monitor performance, both policy performance and online function deliverables and performances, and would give early warning signs that this and this and this seem to be cracking. Because like they say, to break a wall you only need a crack. And there should also be a kind of a synergizing sort of hub that would by itself give Mr. President the opportunity and the intelligence to know where he is failing and why some other places are not working. Because what? All of these ministries are interlinked.
Absolutely.
So if one is underperforming or is not performing or is lacking, obviously it's going to what? Hold down on the others. And this by itself would impact on the overall performance. But meanwhile, each one of these ministers did not go to town to make that social contract with the people. Because what? They did not campaign. They did not make promises. Is it Mr. President who what? Made the promises. And the buck stops with him.
Yes.
And therefore, it is his own interest to ensure that if he did not perform, or he did not meet, or he did not have the capacity to perform optimally, it is you out to give room to the other. Let me come back to the two ministries that were affected. If you take away power and agriculture from the performance of this government, the average, the mean, will be affected very drastically.
What has been their performance in power?
I would not know.
Okay. I
would not know. But I can tell you, for me, especially in power, between 2015 to date, I'm having it better.
Okay.
So if you ask me to speak for myself, I can give them pass mark. But the promise was to give us targets of the amount of megawatts that they would deliver. And if you ask me, the first minister did his best.
Okay.
So if there are hiccups with this one, it is just all and good. And I would also be happy.
Yes. There's this. You mentioned earlier that if the president is not happy with their performance, then he can ease them out because they are there to perform at his pleasure and on his behalf.
Yes.
And constitutionally so.
Yes.
Now, should we say that 2 weeks after the retreat, the performance review retreat, and we haven't had anything from the presidency, no report, does that mean that the president is happy with the performance of his ministers?
I am not good at making guesses, even intelligent guesses.
Okay.
But let me have my thoughts here.
Okay.
Articulating thoughts and driving them takes some time. And we are talking about the totality of public works. I'm using the word here to mean public functions.
Well understood.
Yeah, so if you want to aggregate them and drive a policy with them, it shouldn't be something you do overnight. But I'm also hoping that the retreat is not just going to depend entirely on what I would call academic analysis and deliberations. Because in any case, if you go to town, to the people who are affected by the performance or non-performance of these people, you will get an idea.
Very good. Do you
think who is doing well and who is not doing well?
Very good.
So I'm hoping that...
Do you think Nigerians are satisfied with Buhari's ministers?
I would also...
As a Nigerian,
I would also...
Speaking on behalf of...
I would also just want to talk about myself.
Okay.
You made some names here about some ministers and pose a question.
Okay.
I won't be ashamed to tell you that if you say my life depends on naming more than 50% of the cabinet, I may fail, I may die. The reason...
You would sack them if you were a president?
No, it may well be that I am not connected or they have not connected with me.
Okay. In other words, 50% of the government's ministers are not performing.
I'm saying they are not connected with me, and therefore my life is not taught by them. And therefore, I do not know them. For those who are connected with me, whose business affects me, I can tell you their names. Because what? I can see what they do out there and how it relates to me. And I will also think that Nigerians out there, like I said, they know who is doing what and who is not doing what.
Okay.
And if the government is, Mr. President is going to act on his words to say he wants to have a reality check by assessing the performances of the ministers and putting it against the overall assessment and grading of the government, I am hoping, I will use that word again, I'm repeating it, that they will take into consideration input from the people and they could have intelligence reports on that.
Okay, thank you. So let's look at the whole idea of performance review itself.
Yes.
You know, because it's a governance mechanism.
It's a governance,
you know,
for every institution.
Exactly, for every organization.
Yeah.
You know, so should it be something that governments are doing more in Nigeria? For example, at state level, at local government level?
Yes.
And how can they do it?
I am not even one that support that is done ad hoc. Like I said, there must be a system, a process, and a procedure to check on a daily basis, like a routine, to ensure that all the components of the state are working maximally, so that Mr. President will be able to know why in this index of reports from all sectors coming in are having the grace they have.
Okay.
Like I said, without security, agriculture would be affected. Without security, trade, transport will be affected.
Okay.
Without security, your lifestyle, even your life at itself, even if, Mr. President, even if you are paid $10,000 a day, if you don't have the security, that money is valueless, because what? It wouldn't give you the worth and value that you go home with. So security is paramount. The same way with
are you saying that the president should just focus on a one-point agenda and solve the problem of security for Nigeria?
No. I'm saying that there should be a linkage. The assessment should be towards what? Knowing how each non-performance in any one sector or department is affecting the others. It's like a car.
Okay.
No matter how beautifully built, if, for an example, you don't have a fuse that you are supposed to have somewhere, the car may not move. And therefore, while you could be beating your chest that I have a brand new engine, I have everything intact, a very good 2020 or 2021 vehicle, if you don't have that fuse, that vehicle will not move.
Okay.
And therefore, it is in your own interest to call the mechanics, to call the engine checkers, who would give you an overall check of health situation of the car for it to work maximally. It's the same thing with the states.
So
it is not something that you do periodically.
Okay.
Let the periodic aspect of it be one that would come as the end of a process. If you give it like a circle to say, for every 3 months, we come to discuss the reports that have had, because if you have that system in place, believe me, you would know which department that is actually your problem.
Okay.
You understand? You are saying, why would Mr. President not come talk to you? Because you know that talking to you and talking to Nigerian in itself would have what? Its surrender value and its effect on so many other areas.
Yes.
You understand? At the heat of banditry, at the heat of his, when Mr. President came and spoke, many people will criticize, but you saw the effect. For every time Mr. President speaks, you could see, of course, it's going to hurt some other people, but you could see the changes. Meaning that even information management and information delivery has its own impact on the overall assessment of the government and the perception of the people. Because like I would always say, perception is what? All that it is for the life and quality of a government. So in making your own assessment, you don't just make the assessment for assessment's sake. If the assessment is about deliverables and open or maximizing your delivery capacity, then it has to be a very serious one, not one that could just be arrived at from a 2-week sort of a retreat with the same personnel, because some of them could be very good talkers, and most time they could, in that process, hide the real malice. You understand?
So we're coming towards the very end of the program now.
Yes.
But before then, let me ask one final question.
Thank you.
You said earlier that you need mechanics to come and look at the car to check what is wrong with it. So who would those mechanics be in Nigerian government now? Where lies the solution in terms of governance? Because it is one thing for the president to say that they are having a retreat. It is another thing for the retreat and the performance review to impact, on citizens in their everyday daily lives. So where does the solution lie?
The solution would lie on independent, non-political, and well-equipped professionals who would actually give Mr. President the real lowdown as to what is happening there in the streets. Mr. President needs that honest advice.
Okay.
Somebody who will talk to him. I'm not just saying talking truth to power, but this time around, somebody who would persuade him with concrete evidence of what is happening out there. Because let's face it, before you will realize that you have a bad child in the house, it may take some time. And some time until what? It has gotten to the zenith. Before you will now say, oh, I was living with this. It's the same thing about governance. The people you give and you repose confidence in to act may just be acting for themselves and in spite of you and your own goals and dreams. You understand? So you must have people who would check on them. If you allow me to name names, let me tell you.
Just one?
Yes, let me tell you why Obasanjo was having breakfast in the morning with all manners of people. Those are people who were what? What do they call that word in the street? People who come and gossip their ministers, who come and tell what the ministers are doing. And when they come, listen to them, he threw the security.
So short of time? Yep.
So Mr. President should have independent
counsel,
and that counsel should come from a body that is self-constituting and constituted by what? Patriotic Nigerians, knowledgeable Nigerians who are ready to put out themselves for the good of the country. But if it's going to rely only on presentations by the ministers, believe me, I will not have hope.
On that note, let's call it a day. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Barrister Sam Kargo.
Thank you.
It's been very, very nice and engaging talking to you.
Thank you.
Well, at this point, we have now come towards the end of today's program. Thank you for staying with us. I am Suleiman. Do join us again for another edition of Daily Politics. See you soon.